Welcome. If you're watching this video, that means that you're interested in finding out some details about the packet tracer implementing basic connectivity. Most packet tracer assignments are laid out in a similar way, where we see the addressing table at the top of the instructions, followed by some objectives for the assignment. In this particular case, we have three parts. First, we'll perform some basic configurations on two of the switches. Then we will configure the personal computers, and finally configure the management interface on each of the switches. Background, of course, just tells us an overview of the activity, and then we can get going. So let's do that. In part one, we're going to perform a basic configuration on switch 1, and then basically do that same configuration on the second switch. I'm asked to click on switch S1, which I will do, and enter the correct command to configure a host name on that switch. So I want to get into the command line interface. I hit the enter key on my keyboard one time, and we can see that I am welcomed with the switch and a greater than sign. You may remember from other activities that the enable command line interface command will move us to the mode where we can enter some management commands. And next, config terminal puts us into that configuration mode. Notice that the prompt changes to ensure us that we are actually in that configuration mode. Host name is the keyword, and we will name that switch S1. Again, we are greeted with a little bit of confirmation that that host name changed, because the prompt changed to include that S1 as part of the prompt. Let's move on to step 2, where we're going to configure the console and privileged exec mode passwords. So we're going to use Cisco for the console password and class for the privileged exec mode password. Line console 0 will let us go into configuration of that line. Allows us, well, actually, I want to put password, and then what is the password? Cisco for the console password, and then followed by login to enable it. I can exit to get back to the configuration, and I want to enter a privileged exec mode password of class. Step 3 asks us to verify the password configurations for S1. So how can we do that? Well, we can exit out of the command line interface. We can just go ahead and a banner. So let's move into our switch. The password is Cisco, and when we enable, we have to enter that class password, and we are now at privileged exec mode. To configure, we config terminal, or in fact config T works as a abbreviation. And the keyword is banner with the extension MOTD. Really, any delimiter works to encapsulate the text. And I think in this case, any banner text will work, but we can use what's given to us in the, we'll just use authorized access only. That's nice, short, and sweet. And end with the same delimiting character that we started with. And that should suffice. At step 5, we're asked to save the configuration. When I enter copy run space start, which is shorthand for the running config being copied to the startup config, we are prompted with the name of the startup config file. It's okay just to hit enter there. And the configuration has been stored to non-volatile RAM. For step 6, we're just going to repeat what we have done on switch 1 to switch 2. So what do we need to do? We need to move into privileged exec mode. We need to configure the terminal. We're going to give this a host name of S2. We are going to implement that password of Cisco on the console and class for the privileged exec password. So, and don't forget the login command after the password to activate it. Make that privileged exec mode password class. And lastly, we're going to configure a message of the day banner. And again, we'll use just this authorized access only piece of it. And save the configuration to non-volatile RAM. So remember, we're going to go back. We have to hit the enter key next time to get the prompt back. And we'll copy run start and confirm with the enter key that the startup-config file is just fine. Now it's the time to move on to part 2, where we're going to configure the personal computers. All we need to do in this case is to put some IP addresses on these computers. Again, we can slide up to the top and consult the chart we see that PC1 is going to have 192.168.1.1 with the subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and then PC2 is going to be the .2 address with the same subnet mask. Later in the studies, it will become more clear why these first three octets of the IP address are the same. But for now, we'll just take it as the gospel truth and implement it as instructed. So I'm going to close the switch and open PC1. I want to go to the desktop and choose IP configuration and enter that IP address. I can check over here and make sure that I'm choosing things correctly. Because this IP address is what is called a Class C, the packet tracer tool filled in the subnet mask for me, and since it matches the instructions, I can just let it go and accept what's there. And I am done with PC configuration on PC1. I will move to PC2. And make sure that I'm correct with 1.2. The subnet mask is correct. So that is the simple solution for configuring the two PCs. Now I want to test connectivity to the switches. So we're going to click PC1 and make sure that we're at the command prompt and then ping the IP address for the switch. So we're opening PC1, opening that command prompt, and we're going to ping the IP address of the switch, which we saw from the chart is .1.253. Now, we can see that things don't seem to be working out for us here. Well, they've planted a gotcha. And that's the point of this question here. Were you successful? No, you weren't. There were 4 packets sent and no packets received, so that ping was not successful. The reason is that a switch is a layer 2 device, and by default, each of its interfaces are working on layer 2 or the MAC address level. There is no layer 3 IP address associated with this switch. So that brings us to part 3. We're going to configure the switch management interface. And the instructions are given pretty clear to us so that you don't have to grope around in a panicky manner. We're going to open that switch, S1. Conveniently, I am already at the configuration privilege level. and I config terminal as the instructions indicate. I'm going to enter the next command as given. Interface VLAN 1. And now I've been moved to what's called config-if mode, config interface. I'm going to put the IP address command in, and you can see that the IP address is 192.168.1.253, followed by a space, and then the mask, which is 255.255.255.0. It is imperative that you enter the no shutdown command. By default, an interface, whether it is a real physical interface or in this case a management virtual interface, is shut down. In Cisco world, to bring an interface up, you put no in front of the shutdown command. And you can see as soon as I hit the enter key that I get some messages back to the screen, some logging messages that interface VLAN 1 has changed its state to up, and that the line protocol on that interface is up as well. Let's move to switch 2, and we are going to do very much the same. We're going to config the terminal. We are going to move to the VLAN 1 interface. This time, we are going to use a different IP address, and we can refer to the table that's the .254 address. But the subnet mask is still 255.255.255.0, and we still need to activate the interface with the no shutdown command. Hit enter again to come back to the prompt. We need to save our configurations in both instances. So let's copy our running config to our startup config. Make sure that you're back at the prompt that looks like the switch name followed by the pound sign. We want to verify that we have connections. We're going to use the ping command and verify that our PC1 can communicate to the PC2. So let's use the command prompt and ping. What are we going to ping? 192.168.1.2. And we have perfect 4 packets sent, 4 received. Excellent. We're just given a little bit of advice here that if the first ping doesn't reach 100%, to try again. But we were successful. We can also see down here at the right-hand corner that out of 88 little tasks, we've completed all 88. You can also use the check results and look at the assessment items and verify that you have all green check marks. Excellent. We're done.